The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious began on a morning that felt strangely wrong to Victor Romano, even before he fully opened his eyes. Victor was a man who lived by routine. His life, despite being surrounded by danger, secrets, and power, followed a strict order inside his mansion. Every sound had meaning. Every moment had structure. That was how he stayed in control. So when he woke up that morning and the house felt silent, his instincts immediately warned him that something was off. Usually, the soft sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway by dawn. Lily, his maid, always arrived early. She moved quietly, respectfully, never drawing attention to herself, yet her presence filled the house. She cleaned the rooms, opened the curtains, prepared breakfast, and made sure everything was perfect before Victor stepped out of his bedroom. The smell of fresh coffee and warm bread usually reached him before he even looked at the clock. That morning, there was nothing. No smell, no sound, no movement. Just silence. Victor sat up in bed and checked the time. It was already past 7. His eyebrows tightened with irritation. Lily had never been late, not once in 3 years. She was known for her discipline, not just in his house but in her own life. She was poor, but proud. Quiet, but strong. Victor respected that, even if he never said it aloud. Her absence was not just unusual, it was impossible. He stood up, walked into the hallway, and looked around. The floors were untouched, the curtains still closed, and the kitchen was empty. His irritation slowly turned into anger. In Victor's world, people did not disappear without reason. He had built his reputation on discipline. Anyone who broke routine without explanation faced consequences. Still, deep inside, he felt a strange unease he could not explain. Victor called out Lily's name once, even though he knew she was not there. The sound of his voice echoed back at him. That echo annoyed him even more. He grabbed his phone and called Grace, his assistant and the only person he trusted with both business and personal matters. Grace answered immediately, as always. "Grace," Victor said coldly, "where is Lily?" There was a pause on the line, something Victor noticed instantly. Grace never paused unless something was wrong. She quickly checked her notes and messages, then replied, "She didn't call, sir." No message, no excuse. Victor clenched his jaw. "That's not like her," he said sharply. "Find out why she's not here." Grace promised to handle it, but Victor's anger continued to grow even after the call ended. He sat in his office, staring at the security screens, replaying the previous day in his mind. Lily had left at her usual time. She had wished him a good evening, her voice calm, her smile polite. There had been no sign of fear or stress. At least, none that he had noticed. As the morning dragged on, Victor's frustration turned heavier. He hated unanswered questions. He hated uncertainty even more. Many people feared him, but Lily never had. She spoke little, worked honestly, and kept her distance. That simplicity now bothered him. Why would someone so careful vanish without a word? Victor began to feel something unexpected, concern. He pushed it away at first, telling himself it was only about discipline. But the feeling stayed. In his line of work, absence often meant danger. He had seen too many people disappear, too many lives ruined because of one wrong connection. Lily worked in his house. That alone could put her at risk. When Grace later called back with no clear answers, Victor slammed his fist on the desk. His anger exploded, not just because Lily was missing, but because deep down, he feared what her absence might mean. The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious was no longer just about a missing worker. It was the beginning of a truth Victor was not prepared to face, a truth that would force him to see the cost of his power on innocent lives. As the morning slowly turned into afternoon, Victor Romano found it impossible to focus on his usual work. Important phone calls came in, business matters waited for decisions, but his mind kept returning to the same question again and again: where was Lily? The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious was unfolding quietly, but the tension inside Victor was growing heavier with every passing hour. He sat behind his large desk, staring at papers without reading them, feeling an unusual restlessness he was not used to. Grace arrived at the mansion in person, sensing that this situation could not be handled over the phone. She had spent the last few hours making calls, visiting places, and asking careful questions. When she entered Victor's office, she could see the anger in his eyes, but also something else: worry. She rarely saw that look on his face. Victor was feared because he never showed weakness, yet Lily's absence was slowly breaking through that wall. Grace explained everything she had discovered so far. Lily's phone was turned off. Her landlord said she had not returned home the previous night. A neighbor remembered seeing her walking quickly after work, looking over her shoulder as if someone might be following her. That detail caught Victor's full attention. He leaned forward, listening closely, his fists tightening. "Why didn't she say anything?" Victor asked, his voice low but sharp. If someone was bothering her, she should have spoken. Grace hesitated before answering. "Sir, Lily is not the type to complain. She keeps her problems to herself. And, she may have been afraid." That word, afraid, echoed in Victor's mind. He knew fear very well. He used it as a weapon in his world. But imagining Lily feeling that fear because of him, or because of the life surrounding him, made his chest feel tight. He stood up and began walking slowly across the room, deep in thought. Victor asked Grace to bring Ava, the young kitchen helper who worked part-time and was close to Lily. Ava arrived nervous, clearly intimidated by the mansion and the powerful man standing before her. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, but her concern for Lily was stronger than her fear of Victor. Ava explained that Lily had been acting differently in recent days. She had become quieter than usual, more alert, often checking behind her when leaving work. One evening, Lily had confessed that she felt someone was watching her. She had said she did not want to worry anyone and hoped the feeling would pass. Ava's voice broke as she spoke, guilt filling her words. She wished she had forced Lily to speak up sooner. Victor listened without interrupting. With every word, his anger grew, not at Lily, not at Ava, but at the unseen danger closing in around them. He realized that Lily's silence was not disrespect, it was survival. She was a simple woman trapped too close to a dangerous world she never chose to be part of. As Ava left the room, Victor turned to Grace and gave clear orders. He wanted his men to search carefully, quietly, without drawing attention. He did not want rumors spreading. Lily's safety mattered more than his image. Grace nodded, understanding the seriousness of the situation. This was no longer a missing employee. This was a potential crime. Alone again, Victor stood by the window, looking out at the city he controlled from the shadows. But not yet see clearly. One thing, however, was certain in his mind. Whoever was responsible for Lily's disappearance had crossed a line. And Victor Romano never forgave those who harmed the innocent, especially when their suffering was connected to his name. As night fell over the city, Victor Romano felt a heavy pressure building inside him, the kind that warned of a storm approaching. The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious was no longer a mystery wrapped in silence, it was becoming a dark reality that refused to stay hidden. His men worked quietly across different parts of the city, asking questions, checking streets, watching movements, and listening carefully. Victor waited in his office, the lights dim, his thoughts loud. Every minute that passed without news made his anger stronger and his fear deeper. Grace returned late in the evening, her face serious, her movements careful. Victor knew immediately that she had found something important. She closed the door behind her and spoke in a low voice, explaining that a small local gang had been active near Lily's neighborhood. They were not powerful, but they were desperate, known for targeting weak people connected to strong names. The moment Victor heard that, his chest tightened. He understood exactly what that meant. Lily had not been chosen because of anything she did, but because of where she worked and who she worked for. Grace continued, explaining that witnesses had seen Lily forced into a car near her apartment. The gang believed she might know secrets about Victor's operations. They had followed her for days, watching her movements, waiting for the right moment. Victor felt his blood boil. The idea that someone would dare to touch an innocent woman simply to gain leverage over him filled him with uncontrollable rage. Victor stood up so suddenly that his chair fell backward. He began pacing the room, his footsteps heavy against the floor. His mind replayed every moment Lily had spent in his house, her quiet greetings, her careful work, her simple kindness. She had never asked questions, never crossed boundaries, never shown interest in his business. And yet, she was paying the price for his reputation. "This is my fault," Victor said finally, his voice rough with emotion. Grace looked at him in surprise. He rarely took responsibility for anything that went wrong. But this time, he could not deny it. His power had cast a shadow over Lily's life, and that shadow had now swallowed her. Grace tried to remain calm and focused. She explained that the gang was planning to move Lily to an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. They believed they could scare information out of her or use her as a bargaining tool. That information pushed Victor past the edge of anger into pure fury. His hands clenched into fists as he imagined Lily alone, terrified, confused, suffering because of people who saw her as nothing more than a tool. Victor ordered immediate action. He wanted Lily found alive, unharmed, and brought back safely. He also made it clear that this situation would not be handled quietly or ignored. This was not about showing power, it was about correcting a deep wrong. He did not want revenge fueled by ego. He wanted justice fueled by responsibility. As plans were made, Victor sat alone for a moment, his head lowered. He thought about how easily powerful men forgot the cost of their influence on ordinary lives. Lily had trusted his house to be a place of safety. She had walked out of his gates every evening believing she would return the next day. That trust had been broken. The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious reached its emotional peak in that moment. Victor was no longer acting as a crime boss protecting his territory. He was acting as a man who had failed to protect someone under his care. And that realization burned deeper than any threat, driving him toward a confrontation that would change him forever. The night air felt cold and heavy as Victor Romano prepared himself for what lay ahead. The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious had now turned into a mission driven by responsibility rather than power. Victor chose not to sit back and give orders from a distance. Instead, he put on a dark coat, signaling to Grace and his trusted men that he would lead this operation himself. His decision surprised everyone, but no one questioned it. They could see it in his eyes, this was personal. The city looked different at night, quieter yet more dangerous. As their cars moved toward the outskirts, Victor stared out the window, his thoughts fixed on Lily. He imagined her fear, her confusion, and the helplessness she must be feeling. Each thought tightened the knot in his chest. He had seen suffering before, but it had always been part of the world he controlled. This suffering, however, belonged to someone innocent, someone who never chose to be part of his life of crime. When they reached the abandoned warehouse, Victor signaled for silence. The building stood alone, broken windows staring like empty eyes. His men surrounded the area quietly, following his precise instructions. Victor moved forward, every step steady, his mind clear. The anger that once burned wildly inside him had turned into a focused determination. He was no longer acting out of rage, but out of resolve. Inside the warehouse, they found Lily tied to a chair, weak but conscious. Her face showed fear and exhaustion, yet when she saw Victor, her eyes filled with tears of relief. The moment struck Victor harder than any bullet ever could. He approached her slowly, cutting the ropes with his own hands. Lily apologized through trembling lips, blaming herself for bringing trouble into his life. Those words pierced him deeply. "You did nothing wrong," Victor told her firmly. His voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. "This should never have happened." The men who had taken her were captured quickly. Victor looked at them with a cold calm that was far more frightening than anger. He made it clear that this would not end quietly. He contacted the authorities, ensuring that evidence was placed in the right hands. For once, he chose the law over shadows. He wanted these men to face consequences openly, not disappear silently as others had before. Grace arranged immediate medical care for Lily, while Ava was brought in to stay with her. As Lily was taken away safely, Victor stood alone in the warehouse, surrounded by darkness and silence. He felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him. Power had protected him for years, but it had failed someone who depended on him unknowingly. The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious reached a turning point that night. Victor walked away from the warehouse not feeling victorious, but changed. He understood now that true strength was not just about control, fear, or dominance. It was about responsibility for the lives touched by his actions, even when they never asked to be part of his world. In the days that followed the rescue, the mansion that once echoed with power and control now carried a softer, heavier silence. The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious had ended the danger, but it left behind emotions Victor Romano could not ignore. He returned to his routine, but nothing felt the same. The empty spaces where Lily once worked reminded him daily of how easily innocence could be broken in a world ruled by fear and secrets. Lily recovered slowly under careful medical attention. Grace ensured that she and her younger brother were placed somewhere safe, far from the shadows of Victor's life. When Lily was strong enough, Victor asked to see her, not as a boss, but as a man who owed her an apology. When she arrived at the mansion, she did not wear her uniform. She looked smaller, yet stronger, like someone who had survived something that changed her forever. Victor spoke honestly, something he rarely did. He told Lily that she would never be required to work for him again unless she truly wanted to. He promised to support her education and help her brother build a future far away from fear. Lily listened in silence, tears quietly falling as she thanked him. She did not ask for revenge or compensation. All she wanted was peace. Grace watched the conversation from a distance, understanding that this moment mattered more than any business deal. Ava later joined them, smiling through tears as she hugged Lily. For the first time, Victor saw how deeply these simple connections mattered. They were not weak. They were human. The Mafia boss questioned his maid's absence. What he discovered made him furious ended not with violence, but with reflection. Victor remained a powerful man, but something inside him had shifted. He began to pay closer attention to the people around him, realizing that leadership without care was empty. Lily's absence had taught him a lesson no enemy ever could, that true strength is measured not by fear, but by responsibility and the courage to change.